The city hummed with life outside, oblivious to the war quietly raging within the walls of our small apartment. Every car, every pedestrian, every flicker of neon light could be a signal or a decoy, and I had trained myself to read it all. Lena moved silently beside me, her presence a quiet reassurance in the midst of chaos. I had spent the night devising a plan, one that would force Derek to make a visible move, something irreversible, something we could exploit. But executing it required perfect timing and nerves of steel. One slip, one miscalculation, and all our preparation could collapse like a house of cards. "Are you ready?" I asked, barely moving my lips, knowing Derek's eyes, or someone else's, might be listening. Lena's nod was almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. She had learned quickly. Fear had transformed into precision, anxiety into strategy. I almost felt a pang of pride, though pride in this battle was dangerous. Complacency could be fatal. I tapped a sequence into my laptop. Every digital footprint we had left behind had been cleaned, rerouted, or masked. We were ghosts in the system, and now it was time to turn the tables. The first message came almost immediately after I executed the initial step. "You think you can outsmart me?" I smiled faintly. Derek's arrogance was his weakness. He believed control was absolute, that fear was our only motivator. He didn't realize we had learned his language, understood his psychology. I whispered to Lena, "He's baited. He doesn't know it yet, but he just stepped into the trap." Her eyes widened slightly. "And if he doesn't, then we adapt," I said. "We have layers, contingencies nested within contingencies. This isn't a gamble, it's a calculation." We watched the street from the corner window, scanning for signs of movement. Hours passed, punctuated by the occasional ping of notifications or the distant hum of traffic. Derek's team, confident in their perceived dominance, began to make mistakes. Cameras left unattended, predictable patrols, overconfidence in their surveillance. Each error was a thread we could pull. Each misstep an opportunity to manipulate, redirect, and dominate the narrative. Lena and I moved like dancers in a deadly choreography, our actions synchronized, precise, and deliberate. By mid-afternoon, the first real escalation occurred. A vehicle parked suspiciously near the entrance, engine idling. Two men inside, faces obscured by sunglasses, scanning, calculating. We stayed silent, watching, noting. Their pattern was almost comical in its predictability. They were trying to intimidate without engaging. I leaned closer to Lena. "Do not react. Let them think they provoke fear. We show patience, precision, and control. Everything they do becomes evidence for us." She swallowed, nodding. Her fingers traced the edge of the laptop, a subtle signal that she understood. This was no longer survival, it was strategy. Minutes later, the first direct confrontation arrived in digital form, a live video feed from one of the intruder's cameras. Derek himself appeared, his face sharp, cold, framed in the shadows of his office. "You've played your hand," he said, voice calm, almost mocking. "But every move you make now strengthens my position. I know your patterns, I know your fears, and I will dismantle you before nightfall." I did not flinch, I did not reply. Instead, I studied him, noting every twitch, every microexpression, every imperfection. Derek's arrogance was leaking cracks, tiny, almost imperceptible, but real, and every crack could be exploited. Lena whispered, "He looks uncertain." "Exactly," I replied. "Uncertainty is the seed of error, and errors create openings." We spent the next hour crafting the perfect counter. Every message, every digital breadcrumb, every visual clue was designed to draw him out further, to force him into a move that would expose his vulnerabilities. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the walls with long shadows, I felt the tension spike. Derek was reacting now, visibly frustrated. His control was slipping. And with control comes desperation, an emotion we could manipulate, bend, and ultimately weaponize. The city outside remained indifferent, unaware of the invisible chess game unfolding within. But inside, every heartbeat was synchronized to strategy, every breath measured, every thought aligned with the ultimate goal: to make Derek reveal himself and his weakness. And as the first faint sirens echoed from a distance, signaling perhaps a new layer of complication, or perhaps a perfect distraction, we prepared to make our move. The trap was set. The stage was ours, and the game finally was about to shift irreversibly in our favor. The first signs of movement came subtly, almost innocuously. Derek's men began shifting positions outside, adjusting their patterns as if anticipating our next move. But anticipation, like arrogance, is predictable when examined carefully. I leaned over the table, eyes scanning the grid of digital feeds we had pieced together over the past week. "See that?" I whispered to Lena, pointing at one of the security nodes. "He's trying to reroute the cameras. Classic distraction. Watch their blind spots." Her eyes narrowed. "They're good, but predictable." "Exactly," I said, feeling a thrill of certainty. "Predictability is a weapon if you know how to wield it." I tapped a few commands, sending a subtle loop into one of Derek's primary surveillance feeds. His men would see us moving in patterns that weren't real, shadows where there were none, footsteps where none existed. By the time they realized, it would be too late. Outside, a faint rustle. The hum of engines and distant traffic masked subtle sounds, footsteps, shifting metal, murmured orders. Every micro-movement was a story, and I had become fluent in its language. Lena mirrored my movements, silent but precise, her fingers flying over the keyboard, orchestrating layers of deception that intertwined like threads in a spider's web. Minutes passed. Then the unmistakable sound of glass breaking, a small, deliberate noise designed to draw attention. I signaled Lena to stay calm while I moved closer to the window, my body tense, senses heightened. Two of Derek's men were attempting an entry through a side door we had noted earlier, unaware that we had anticipated it. "They're walking into it," I muttered. Lena's breath hitched slightly. "It's almost too easy." "Too easy is dangerous," I reminded her. "Stay sharp. We only need one misstep from them. One." I watched, calculating. Their approach was cautious, but desperation lingered beneath their composed exterior. Each hesitation, each glance over the shoulder, each misstep in their coordination was logged, analyzed, stored. Every imperfection in their discipline was ammunition. Then Derek himself appeared on a secondary feed, furious, pacing the room with an intensity that radiated through the screen. His composure had begun to crumble, revealing fissures in the mask he so carefully wore. "You're interfering with everything," he shouted, almost shaking the camera. "Do you understand what you've done?" I did not reply. Silence was a weapon too. It forced him to confront his own frustration, to reveal more of himself than words ever could. Lena's hand brushed mine. "He's losing control." I nodded, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. "Good, we want him unbalanced." Unbalanced men make mistakes. The intruders outside made a decisive move, entering the building cautiously. Our traps were already in place. The doors we had subtly reinforced now funneled them through a narrow corridor lined with sensors and strategic obstacles. Every step they took would be logged, projected, and manipulated to our advantage. Inside, the tension was almost palpable. Lena and I moved silently, synchronizing every action. We weren't merely reacting. We were dictating the rhythm of events. Derek's team was dancing to our tune, unaware they had lost control. A loud click, a subtle alarm our countermeasure triggered. One of the men froze, eyes darting. Another stumbled, misreading a digital signal we had inserted into the floor sensors. Panic flashed, brief but visible, before they attempted to recalibrate. "Now," I whispered. Lena initiated the next phase. Multiple feeds displayed conflicting movements, shadows, phantom sounds, chaos masked as control. Derek's team floundered, reacting to ghosts, while we remained unseen and untouched. The clock was our ally. Each second, Derek's frustration grew, each heartbeat a marker of impending error. He was being forced into moves he couldn't predict, caught in a net of his own arrogance. Finally, a message from Derek, typed and sent through a secure channel. "Stop this. You don't understand the consequences. One more step and it ends for you." I leaned back, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "He still doesn't see it," I said. "He thinks fear will make us flinch. He doesn't understand that we've become the predators." Lena exhaled slowly. "So what's next?" "The next move," I said, "is to expose him fully. Not just to us, but to his own men. Let them see the cracks, the doubts. Control is fragile. Once they perceive it, everything collapses." Outside, the intruders faltered, confusion spreading like wildfire. Inside, Derek's arrogance began turning inward, paranoia seeping into every command he gave. And we waited, patient, precise, knowing that the decisive moment, the one that would shift the entire game, was approaching. The city remained oblivious, the hum of life continuing outside our walls. But inside, a storm was building, one that Derek could neither anticipate nor control, and when it broke, nothing would ever be the same. The air was electric, charged with anticipation. Every second stretched taut like a wire ready to snap. Derek's men were scattered now, unsure where to move, their cohesion unraveling as we continued to manipulate every surveillance feed, every sound, every subtle shift in their environment. I crouched behind the console, eyes fixed on multiple monitors, tracking every micro-movement. Lena mirrored my actions, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with a rhythm that seemed almost hypnotic. Each keystroke, each command was a calculated strike, pushing Derek closer to the edge. "Here," I whispered, "he's vulnerable now, his own men are starting to doubt him." The feeds confirmed it. A subtle hesitation in one of his lieutenants, a brief exchange of nervous glances, a stifled question. They were questioning his judgment without realizing it, and I knew how fragile that kind of doubt could be. I activated the next sequence. The building's lights flickered briefly, then dimmed in a pattern that created shadows, false corridors, phantom movement. Derek's team reacted instinctively, moving toward the illusions, leaving their real positions exposed. Outside, sirens, our backup, began wailing in the distance, triggered remotely to create chaos. The sound of approaching law enforcement added another layer of confusion. Derek's men faltered, trying to figure out the source, while Derek himself remained glued to the main feed, fury and fear mingling in his expression. "This is it," Lena said softly, a hint of excitement in her voice. "Everything we planned comes together now." I nodded. "Watch closely." I initiated the final trap. A series of automated doors locked, funneling the intruders into a single corridor we had prepared earlier. They realized too late that every escape route was blocked, every avenue of retreat carefully orchestrated. Their panic became palpable, their coordination crumbling entirely. On the monitors, Derek's face twisted. He was shouting commands, but his words were drowned out by the cacophony of alarms, sirens, and digital chaos. His men were no longer listening, the trust he had relied on had evaporated. "Phase 2, I murmured. Lena executed a sequence that projected live footage of Derek's indecision and failures onto screens that his men could see. Every mistake, every hesitation, every unwise order was magnified. The effect was instantaneous. His men began questioning him openly, arguing over the next move, their loyalty evaporating as quickly as their confidence in their leader. Derek tried to regain control, but it was too late, the cracks were too deep. I leaned back, allowing a rare moment of satisfaction. Years of planning, careful observation, and manipulation had led to this precise moment. Derek was no longer a threat. His own actions, his arrogance, and his inability to anticipate the subtle currents of control had undone him completely. Outside, the sound of approaching authorities grew louder. The remaining men, now leaderless and confused, had no choice but to surrender. Derek himself attempted a desperate escape, but the building's security system had him contained, every exit sealed, every path blocked. I watched him through the camera feed, his eyes scanning for a way out, realizing too late that he had been outmaneuvered at every turn. His fury turned to resignation and finally to disbelief. Lena exhaled slowly. "It's done." I allowed myself a faint smile. "It's more than done. We've not just survived, we've taken control completely." Every move he thought he made in secret was already anticipated. Every strategy he relied on has been turned against him. As the sun began to rise outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I realized something profound. The world was always moving, always shifting, and chaos was inevitable. But with patience, strategy, and understanding, it could be guided, directed, and, if necessary, mastered. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to breathe. The game was won, the threat neutralized, and the future, for now, was ours to shape.